Hello and welcome back. We've gotten a lot of emails the last couple of weeks about throttles and clutches for outboard powered boats, and it's amazing to me how you can go an entire year or maybe even 2 years at times and not hear about anybody having any complaints or issues. But some of the emails that we've received are when you have a throttle on your boat and you push it up to cruising speed, and this, by the way, is a binnacle mount control box. You push it up to cruising speed. Whenever you remove your hand, the throttle will slowly eke back to a smaller or lesser RPM range. Well, this is a common phenomenon, and unfortunately, with the cables that we have today, they've got slack in them, and there's just nothing you can do to overcome that unless you know the secret of tightening up the friction control for your throttle. So that's what I want to show you today. The box that we're working on happens to be a top-mount premium Yamaha control box. It's a very simple box. Simply has one lever. Forward obviously moves the boat forward. The harder you push it forward, the faster it goes. The neutral position is exactly that. It's in neutral. And then pulling it down is reverse, and the harder you push it down, the faster in reverse that it will go. Also on the side, it has a power tilt and trim switch to operate the engine up and down to control your trim. Now, right up underneath here is a little rubber gasket that a lot of people don't even ask what this is. You know what? I don't even need a screwdriver for that. This little guy we're going to pull off, and I'll show you so you'll have an idea of exactly what it looks like. It's just a little rubber gasket. Now, up underneath here, and we're going to have to get a little closer here so you can take a look at that, there will be two screws that you're going to see. One is going to be a Phillips head screw. That is not the screw we're looking for. That actually holds the control box down. But the little barrel screw right next to it is a flathead object that you just stick a regular standard screwdriver into. And this is real important. You do not want to over tighten this guy. This is best done when you're out on the water. That's why it's so easy to pull this little rubber grommet off. So we're going to take our screwdriver, we're going to stick it in the standard slot in the neutral position, and we're going to give just small turns. Now once you give it a small turn, that's a good time to put it back in gear and bring it up to cruise speed, taking your hand off of the throttle, and just take a look and see where you are. This is taking up a lot of slack with just very small increments. Some people will get in there and give it a half or 3/4 of a turn. Then they find out they can't get any speed at all. There's too much friction. So it's best to take it from its worst position, meaning that there's not enough friction there, and slowly tighten it down until it's something comfortable for you to operate with. Once that is done, we're simply going to reinstall our plastic cap. Get in there. We'll reinstall our plastic cap, and then we're ready to go boating. Now, while we're up here, I'll show you guys one more thing. We're going to kind of do a 2-for-1 here. This is a standard dash for a standard center console boat. If you've been boating very long, you'll notice it has a RPM gauge as well as a speed gauge. This happens to be how much fuel is left. And these are the accessory switches, the courtesy lights, the aerator, and the different pumps. What a lot of people forget about is what happens behind this guy here and what makes all of these switches work. Well, we're going to take a real quick look. This particular boat happens to be a Pioneer built in South Carolina. It's a 197 Sport Fish. Beautifully built, beautifully done, and very standard as far as the equipment and the way things are mounted on this particular boat. Now this control panel just has four screws. You can tell there's nothing big about these guys outside of them being stainless steel. But let's take a look and see what's behind this panel. Now to the average person, this would scare you to death. What we're trying to illustrate today are two things. One, take a look at these switches. Understand what the front switch looks like on the back and how things are attached to it. Should you ever need a switch, you'll know exactly what you're doing once you come and start taking the different leads off. But what I want to show you today, since this is not a waterproof box, and guys, folks, none of them will be, fresh water, salt water, rainwater will always come down and hit these electrical connections, and at some point they're going to start corroding. So these are the things that we're going to do when it's rainy outside or you just couldn't go boating today, are simply taking these different connections off and taking a look and seeing what kind of condition the different connections have. Now this happens to be a double connector here, and this is a product that we use quite a bit. It's called Corrosion Block, and it does exactly that. It's just a wonderful product for fighting corrosion. But for our application today, shake this bottle up. We're going to give it just a little squirt. And we're going to take Corrosion Block, and we're just going to just gently wipe it over these connections. After we do this, we will reinstall back onto the proper leg. Now, really, really important. You notice this one switch happens to have about 9 different plugs going into it for all the different areas that it happens to be running, and also the different functions that this switch happens to do, which is a 3-way switch, an up, down, and off being in the middle. I would only recommend pulling one of these off at a time. Not recommended to go pull them all off, clean them, and then try to figure out where they go. Same thing can be done on our gauges, as well as some of the, like this is the fuel gauge and the 12-volt accessory. These are areas that you'll want to treat as well. Lastly, you will always have a couple of areas that will house fuses. These little bullets here, they're completely waterproof, so I'm not going to take those apart. But should one of your gauges go out, good chance that you probably got a blown fuse. When you put these on, they're sealed from the factory. It means they're waterproof as well as shockproof, and they're nice and spongy. If you don't have a problem, don't go in there manipulating them or opening them up. It's a good idea just to leave them in their case or how they came from the manufacturer. Now, after you guys get through cleaning your electrical connections, we want to gently put the dash back lined up where it came from. We're going to take our stainless steel screws. The first one's always the most tricky, getting it back, and that makes number 4. That's the screw we've been looking for. Put these guys nice and hand tight, and just because you don't do this every day, it's a real good idea to go through the different functions for each of these switches. Just make sure what is supposed to come on actually comes on. If you've got a problem sitting in your driveway or sitting at the marina, it's a good time to fix it there than out on the water. So guys, there you have it. Don't forget about your friction screw on your top mount control box, and don't forget about your electrical connections. If those guys get corroded, they're not going to work. It's going to leave you at the dock. Just make for a horrible day. That's all the time we have for this episode. I want to thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.